Well, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for turning up and coming to join in the discussion and the talking. Now, today's subject, karma and reincarnation. We did talk about karma a little bit in the last one because we were talking about universal law, and karma is, of course, the law of laws. You remember we talked about that? Just a quick recap on that then, to the point where we discovered that karma was present or was activated or came about by the very first stirrings of the Absolute returning back into a creative state from a rest period. And we decided that that was because once something starts to happen, things have to be kept in balance. Otherwise, it's likely to run away with itself all one-sidedly and get in a mess and not serve any purpose whatsoever. Chaos, in other words. So karma really is a law of adjustment and balance, which is inherent in the nature of creation itself. And it is from that reason that it's inherent right from the very start that all of the laws will emerge as a result of that. And we're not going to go into specific laws because we did some of that in last talk. So I'm not sure if any of you want to just revisit that a moment and ask any questions on that, because it was a lot to take in. This idea of where creation begins is the very central plank of Theosophy. Just like karma, everything in Theosophy stems from that single point, because the premise is made in Theosophy that what we see around us and what we're part of is one thing, is one life, which has its day and its night, just like we have our days and our nights, and that this creation we are part of now is a day in its life. And Madame Blavatsky referred to it as the Absolute because there's nothing else. So I know that was a lot to take in, and the description of this thing slumbering in the darkness, and what is the darkness, and then stirring into activity, and then these laws coming into being. And we talked about the angelic beings and the great devas and Buddhas unfolding from within themselves, remembering the universe from the previous time. You remember that? Mm. This really subject, and the subject we'll come to later, which is chains and rounds, they are the deepest aspects of Theosophy. But they're the things that give Theosophy its absolute authority, because no other philosophy, religion or ideology even comes near to describing those systems which are fundamental to the life process itself. That's why Theosophy is such an important set of teachings, body of knowledge. So if you've got any lingering thoughts or doubts about that, now's your time to sort of speak up, and we'll have a little look before we carry on into karma itself.
Just one thing. I think of the Absolute as the, indescribable, amazing. But it's like a reflection. It isn't it, but it's a reflection of it that starts everything off. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, you could say that, yes. I mean, over the years there's been so many descriptions and images given to this unknowable thing.
Yeah.
Because it is unknowable. And I think we mentioned last time that when you try to give it form and reason within your mind, you're only bringing it down to your level, and therefore losing the nature of it itself, because you can't get to that yet. But we also said, didn't we, that the whole course of evolution, which goes on for millennia, is what is taking us to an expansion of consciousness that will be able to contemplate that directly. At the moment, we only see the reflections of it. We see it's a bit like standing in front of a mirror, opening your eyes and seeing yourself. But in our case, we are the reflection, trying to look back at it, and we haven't got the eyes to see out of the mirror, have we?
I find that for a very long time quite difficult to come, how can something be and not be, just being there.
It's energy, isn't it? It's all energy.
Yes, it is all energy, quite right. Well, let's say it is energy when it does anything, you see.
Yes.
Yeah.
When it's at rest, when creation has stopped, then there's no energy. So it's the same as you when you're asleep. There are processes going on in your body, but you're not making any actions. You're not actually...
But the absolute itself is just there.
Yeah. We got this wonderful mystical vision of the Mother Deep. And that's mentioned in the Bible. And the Mother Deep is just the same level of mystical paradox as the Absolute itself. Is the Mother Deep part of the Absolute? Is the Absolute somewhere within the Mother Deep? This is very high metaphysics, and it isn't actually appropriate for a basic course which is dealing with only with principles. But in passing, we can say that I can't remember the Bible term, but in Genesis it says
Spirit of God moved over the face of the waters.
That's right. The waters are the Mother Deep, i.e. the darkness. So even science is puzzling on this now, like if we take all the matter from space, from the universe, and remove it, they've still got the darkness. Yeah. So what is the darkness? But that's why they call it the Mother Deep, because out of that mother womb comes everything that can ever possibly exist. It can't come from the Father, but it's the Father, the Spirit's stirring within the mother that produces the child, and that child is creation. So that's another way to look at it, isn't it? And then Sri Krishna Ram, the beautiful writer, says that humanity, the Son, the Father, is like forever chasing his beloved through the corridors of life, not realizing that he is within her, already within her. That's why he can't find her, because he's within her. I find those ideas really moving, and I'm not adequate to put them in poetic enough words for you, but there have been some wonderful things written about this side of things, which is too deep to actually just pin down with your mind and say it's A, B, C. But you can see it through poetry, you can see it through the art and some of this poetic language that some of the classical writers have used, inspired from within, obviously. So karma then begins as a result of the one, absolute, dividing, and from that comes this law of laws, which is constantly attempting to bring everything back into balance, or at least stopping it running away with itself. It won't come back into balance until the whole term has been completed, obviously, because there's ongoing issues all the time. Even as one issue is being resolved, others are being generated. So this is duality, isn't it? Now, for the purposes of our talk, which is karma and reincarnation, we can introduce reincarnation at this point, because we can say then that everything in the universe, if you remember again from last time, is subject to the cyclic law. That is the law that everything moves in cycles. Everything. Every process, every energy, every thought, everything, every life, every system, every creation, every universe, all moves in cycles. And reincarnation is part of that cyclic law. when we say reincarnation, we usually refer to the human beings. We reincarnate. But actually, that is a personalised term to humanity. It is a cyclic law, which means everything is reincarnating. The flowers in your garden that are waking up now, and the shrubs, are in a state of reincarnating, aren't they? You reincarnate every morning when you wake up. In that sense, because it's part of the cyclic movement that you go through your life following. And karma, of course, and reincarnation are referred to as twin sisters. They are interlinked, inextricably interlinked, because the cyclic law comes from the prime law karma, because karma can't adjust everything in the one moment. As creation begins, it starts to run away with itself. Karma tries to balance it back again, and it can't succeed. It can balance some things and not others. And other things are generated all the time. As creation unfolds, more and more is required to be held in balance. Therefore, everything that comes into existence, because of its generating karma within its own life movement, needs countless lifetimes to account for its actions through the agency of karma. So when we personalise that into terms of human lives, we can say then that what we're doing in this life now, as we've gone through our life, most of us through most of our life now, and then we haven't resolved all our issues from this life. There are issues that we don't even know we've generated, where people have taken offence or have done things because of the things we've done and we're not even aware of that. And so we're going to need another lifetime just to put some of the issues from this lifetime back into order again. But there are still some outstanding from the life before that, and the life before that, and the life before that, and actually goes right back to the point where we first became human beings. So that is why the cyclic law is inherent within and a product of karma, and that's why karma is the law of laws.
Does it happen when you're a child as well? I mean,
Speak up a little bit, Elaine.
when you're a child,
Yes.
right, and
Okay,
you have
good point.
infections,
Good point.
Does karma come in?
Okay, then we need to look at which bit of us as human beings is actually responsible for or experiencing the karma from our actions. Well, I can tell you now, it's not my body. My body didn't do anything that I didn't tell it to do. So then, well, what is I? Is it my lower mind? Because if it is, that'll be gone at the end of this incarnation. That'll be gone. I'll start with a new one next time. So if my lower mind needs some correcting, it's got to be corrected during this lifetime. Otherwise, wouldn't be fair for that to be visited on my next lower mind. Although in some respects it is, because what I generate in my life in terms of building my character, my qualities and capacities, those will be carried on. But it'll be a new physical body, it'll be a new astral body and a new mental body that has to take up that challenge and carry on with it. Therefore, without too long going back, we would soon realise that what is actually responsible for our actions and is reaping the karmic result is our spiritual self. Because it is that is incarnating time after time after time. Not Elaine, not Eric, not Beryl. We're only temporary. We are, remember what we said last time, we are the appearance. This is our appearance of our spiritual self. Our spiritual self is in here, but it's using this persona, this mask of solid bodies, to actually experience and to communicate and operate in this outer world. Therefore, the karma belongs to the spirit.
I one of the statements...
Can I just... Sorry, Greta, I'll come back to you in a moment, because I still haven't quite answered your point. Now, when a child comes into life, it's not connected directly, it's only connected indirectly to its spiritual self until it gets to around about the age of 7. Once it gets past that first 7-year period, then the connection to the spiritual self is actually established properly. And then its own personal karma, spiritual karma, can come into its life. Up to that point, the karma that it experiences, because children do have, illnesses and circumstances, don't they? Some are born in rich families, some are born in poor families, some are born with spina bifida or whatever. That karma is a shared karma. It is family karma, to do with your parents and your siblings and their parents and their siblings. It is national karma, and the things that we've got up to, as a group of people. And, so you could say, well, why would one particular child suffer a terrible disability when other children, part of the same group, are not? But then it depends on what part that child had played in previous lives in the group karma, doesn't it? You can imagine for yourself, looking at recent history, what kind of karma will visit the spirits that have been occupying the last 20th century and some of the things that people got up to. But personal karma doesn't come in until after you're 7. This is why the Jesuits used to say, give me a child until he's 7 and I'll give you the man. Because up to that point, the child is like a blank piece of paper. You can put anything you want onto it. And here lies the danger, isn't it? Because by the time you get to your own majority, you've already been conditioned by those around you. And then if you have a spiritual awareness which is quite advanced, it's got to deal with all that stuff that's picked up in the first 7 years or so. And then of course the next 7 years is to do with its emotional growth. The first 7 years is mostly physical, then it's emotional growth, then the third 7 years is mental growth. It's all happening at the same time, but the focus is on these different things. And that's why we say then by the age of 18 or so, 21, we are responsible adults after that. But I maintain we are conditioned to the hilt by then.
Oh yes.
And we were conditioned in life's ways, not in spiritual ways. Now, Greta, you wanted to...
I was going to say one of the most poignant things that I read was that the spirit is forced into this body with all its karma to be dealt with by this. I think of it as pristine soul that, Atma, Buddha and higher manners. And it seems like a cruelty to do that time after time after time.
Yes, but you see, you're looking at it from this point of view. If you looked at it from that high point of view, you'll see there's no suffering at all. This pristine soul cannot suffer. What it does is suffer handicaps in its ability to operate. So it's a bit like you getting on a computer and dealing with a computer program, which is giving you lots of problems.
Yeah.
But
in itself,
it's remote, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. So basically, the soul, the spirit, is living this life with the consequences of its previous lives overloaded onto the vehicles that it has to use, and therefore it's limited to how much it can do. And so we see that young souls, as it were, don't have much spirituality about them. It's all about survival. But as you get civilized and you get more intellectual and you get where we are now and beyond, your spiritual self is taking more direct action within the life of the personality, and slowly it takes over the personality, it takes charge, because it has to evolve itself to do that. So it's experiencing, isn't it? Now, I'll give you a good example of karma, which I read only this morning in a writer's magazine I picked up at the doctor's. It's about Conan Doyle, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. We all know what a great prolific writer he was, and how famous writer he was, and successful writer, with his Sherlock Holmes and all the rest of it. But the first manuscript he wrote, and don't forget he didn't do that on a computer, he had to do it on a by hand.
Typewriter or hand.
By hand. And you get 2 pages about that thick for a novel would be about that thick by hand. He sent it off to a publisher, and after a few months he inquired, did the publisher like it? He said, what manuscript? I had a manuscript. It turned out to have been lost, and he never tracked it down.
No, of course he wouldn't have.
So he had to write it again from memory. Now, if you've ever tried to write an email you've lost again,
It's always different. Yes.
and you're thinking, I'm sure I said, so what did I say there? It was something that I had a good point, I can't remember, and that's not right anyway, I don't like it. I'm sure I put it better than that, and that's only an email.
Yeah.
Imagine writing a novel, then having to go back and sort of rewrite it. How the frustration of that. 3 years later he published his first Sherlock Holmes novel, and away he went. But this, to me, well, as Julie pointed it out, was that this is how karma affects you. This would possibly be a result of wasted opportunity in a previous life. Life presents you with certain opportunities. You have grown to the point where you're able to take advantage of those opportunities, and then you waste them, you don't bother. You have a talent and you don't use it. Then in the next life, you have the same talent, and you think, yes, I'm going to write a novel, I'm going to be a writer, I want to be a writer. And what you have to do is to overcome this karmic thing that says, well, you wasted it last time, let's see if you really have the willpower to do this, because your first step is going to be so frustrating that if you really are a writer, you'll have to overcome that and make up for the wasted opportunity you did before. It's not like someone stood there doing all this. It's like, this is the consequences of his actions in a previous life. And of course, he was a talented writer, and he did overcome that obstacle, and he did carry on. He didn't let it put him off and waste another opportunity, did he? So in our lives, we should say to ourselves, when all the things that we find are difficult, and we have difficulties to get over, to actually get them done, say to yourself, well, that's fully because I wasted that when I had a better opportunity before, and I wasted it, and now I've had to struggle. But at least I've overcome that now. Don't let things defeat you. When a thing is trying to defeat you, it's probably because you didn't care about it before. That's a great lesson, I think. So karma needs more than one lifetime to work out. It needs more of everything to work out. And karma gives back to every man and woman, to everything, the consequences of their actions. This is why it's referred to as the just law. Because how much more just can a law be than to only give you back that which you've generated for yourself, the consequences of your own actions. But that also tells us that we're not suffering from the consequences of other people's actions, only of our own. That's a difficult one to get your head around at first, because I remember many years back wrestling with that one, because it seemed to me that I was quite obviously suffering from what other people did. But that's a mistaken view. You only suffer from what you do yourself. And if other people are involved, they're the agency that brings back to you the consequences of your previous actions, even though you can't remember those previous actions. If it was in a previous life, you wouldn't, would you? Even in the one life, in this life, there are things that you're up against now which you can't realise how you generated that when you were younger. The trick is to just get on with it, isn't it? Not bemoan your own fate. And it helps to realise that whatever's befalling you, it's only what you asked for as a consequence of what you did.
the most difficult part for me is my thought processes, because it's quite. I spend quite a bit of time alone, and I think to my, I'm always thinking, and when I look back, I think, I'd have been better not thinking like that.
Because you're highlighting a very good point, aren't you? That it's not, actions are not confined to the physical body. They include our thoughts and our feelings. But I wouldn't get paranoid about it. I wouldn't get, obsessed about, I mustn't think that, I mustn't think this.
Because you can't.
What really makes a difference, you see, at the most subtle level, what makes a difference is the intent behind the thought, and also the frequency with which you think these things. So if you're constantly criticising, say, another race, for instance, because you think what they're doing is, then if you're constantly doing that, then you are generating some difficult consequences for yourself in the future. But if you just think what a thing is, maybe you look at another race and you think, well, you're going through it in your mind, trying to work it out, trying to see it in perspective, seeing where your prejudices lie and where they don't, or even feeling prejudice and then thinking, well, that was a bit naughty, you shouldn't think like that. You're not generating great karma for yourself. But it's where you put a lot of energy into thinking. That's what carries it out and attracts other energies of the same kind. So like racism, for instance, it's terrible energy. If you indulge in racism in your mind, as those thoughts go out, they attract other racist thoughts. And that's where the danger lies, really. Yeah.
I think if you I'm a bit aggressive. Think, somebody will get up your nose, do something in front of you in a car or something, and you think, my husband used to say, Janice, if you had a machine gun on your car, nobody left on the road. But
I'm sure we all feel like that.
I think it's okay. It's not okay to think those thoughts, but I think it maybe does help if you can suddenly stop and think, stop that, it's not good, and you can sort of think to the time perhaps when you did something that perhaps got up the nose of somebody else in a car, because we all make mistakes when we're driving, don't we? So it's I think that's important to know that it's the intention, isn't it? If it's a constant intention of harming people, then that's different.
Because they do say, don't they, we tend to pick out faults in other people that we actually have ourselves.
Exactly.
I know I do.
Yeah.
And also by the same rule, you see, when you come into a spiritual discipline like Theosophy, or you're studying, or you're trying to take on responsibility for your life now and move on more consciously, this is the kind of thing when you meditate, apart from meditating to go into a stillness, when you meditate to think things through, you should be examining yourself like that and saying, well, hang on, why do I lose my patience with everybody? That needs checking. I need to understand myself there, and then I need to get over myself. Most of it's a question of getting over yourself, isn't it? Come on. For God's sake. But when it's you, and you're fumbling for your change, or you can't find your credit card, and other people in the queue, it's all perfectly natural, isn't it? Because you can't help it, can you? And if people are doddering and slow, especially they're 90, well, How many times do you find yourself behind someone who's doing like 25 miles an hour and it's a 60 zone? And you can't get past because the car's coming the other way, and you think, for God's sake,
I know.
Shouldn't be on the road, these people shouldn't be on the road. But when you get to that state, do you want to not be on the road, or do you want to creep along to the shop and get your little bit of groceries, so you can, once a week?
We have to be more understanding, don't we?
Yeah.
Well, I can say in my defence is, since I've become a spiritual theosophist, I have the ability now to say, yeah, okay, we'll just carry on now.
Yeah. In some way or other, we're all...
When you drive me next time.
Well, remind him next time.
Constantly.
Well done. You see, behind every great man is a woman telling him where he went wrong. So yes, that's what we should be doing. Self-examination, you see. And then this word discrimination. It doesn't mean discriminate against people. It means discriminating yourself.
That's it.
You know, choosing wisely what you tend to do and how you tend to think, because so much of what we think is a social thing. It's not our thought through opinion. It's what we just assume with everybody else. When we examine it, do we really want to go along with that? Probably not. No. Especially if we're doing something like Theosophy, we need to take a higher and higher view. And the higher we go, the more we're going to see everything in the same level playing field, aren't we? Oh, for God's sake. This happened before. You have to excuse me, because
We'll be patient.
I've got a bucket of water. Sorry, John, I can't speak to you right now, and I'm actually going to put my phone off, even though it's too late, because you might ring back.
Eric, I was in the queue for the supermarket trolley, and there was a gentleman in front of me, and he got right up and was beginning to empty the trolley, and he said, "This isn't my trolley." And it was like, the queue. That's me.
Well, I tried to do that with a
That's
pram
me.
with someone's baby in.
But it was like somebody giving me a picture of my next stage of running off.
Yeah. So another thing that karma does, and this is of a very uplifting nature, is that karma makes it possible for each human being, in fact every aspect of nature, but we'll just talk about human being, for each human being to realise, in the fullness of time, their immense potentiality. Without karma, you would never get there. You wouldn't do that. You'd fall into a state of averageness. You would never push yourself. Like Arthur Conan Doyle had to push himself to rewrite that manuscript. That was probably what made him into a good writer. So only by pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone will you ever change. But karma will keep coming back at you and will make sure that in the fullness of time you will realise your immense potential. And the word there is immense, because our potential as human beings is a potential of a God. Not just someone who goes to work 9 to 5, comes home and watches television, goes to bed, goes to work. That's just part of the journey. In the fullness of time, we are going to be incredibly powerful, beautiful beings. And karma is making that possible. So, let's look at what happens after we've left this body behind, so-called death. I say so-called because nothing really dies, we just change our condition, don't we? First of all, we're going to review our past life. That's the first thing that is reported everywhere and in every authority on this kind of thing, is that you go into a past life review. And it's sort of like you start from the point where you died, where your body died, and you will journey back through your life until you reach the earliest points of recollections, and then you'll journey back again towards your death. And you may do that several times as you pick up the meaning between one action and its consequence, between what you did and what you reaped from that, yes, and how you affected everybody around you. It's from this that the soul, the spirit, makes up part of its determination for what it will actually attempt to achieve in its next life. And with the agency of karma, if that's whatever's possible, that that will be provided in circumstance. And so you see people say, well, why are people born in different circumstances? One a prince, one a pauper, and so on. But this is because the spirit, having looked at its last life, has decided that the best circumstances to make amends or to grow or learn specific lessons is to be born in those particular circumstances or thereabout. That's a hard one too, because we see around us people in different circumstances and we tend to see that as unfair. Most people would think it was unfair that some people are born into very rich families and other people are born in poverty.
Except
It's
that
experienced, don't you?
everything has two ends of the balance, isn't it? You come from a very rich family, your responsibility for using that wealth is great, isn't it?
It is.
Doesn't always make you happy either.
But it doesn't all make you happy either. But the point is, you could be born, I mean, history tells us that some people are born into very rich families just wasted their lives entirely in debauchery and pleasure.
Yes.
Having been waited on hand and foot and never did anything for any good for anybody else. But other people born into poverty lifted themselves up and became statesmen, in fact, looking at the greatest people from the 20th century, you find most of them were born in poor circumstances,
right.
not in... And this is like, again, the spirit pushing beyond the limitation that it finds itself in. And then they rise to great... Once you break those kind of barriers, you know the sky's the limit, isn't it?
Well, we're all going to be born at some point poor, and we're all going to be born rich.
Yeah,
To experience everything.
yeah. I mean, Nelson Mandela was born in a ghetto.
Yes.
So this afterlife, after death sort of review of the past life is very important to the soul. It allows it to see in perspective the life it's lived, rather than, you know, with our limited memory and awareness, we're going fractionally from day to day and not keeping abreast of the way things are going. Then there's a kind of what, for want of a better phrase, I would call an astral afterlife, which is where most of us will be for hundreds of years, where we will gravitate to the sort of average level of our emotional life, emotional stroke mental life, so that this is very much a case of like attracts like, birds of a feather stick together, that kind of thing. So you after your death, you will gravitate to the kind of company that is similar to your own, with the kind of views of things as yourself. And people that are in specific groups that will tend to incarnate in herds, as it were, will find themselves congregating there after the life and prior to the next one, where it's said they will discuss how they got on and then make plans for what they'll do on the next one. You can see a bunch of Theosophists over there, a bunch of Christians over there, and a bunch of...
But they say the God's mansions, many rooms.
Many in my Father's house there are many mansions.
Yeah.
If it were not so, I would have told you. Yeah. But then the question comes up, well, is there a heaven and a hell then? Well, in the Christian sense, no. In the Christians put it very clearly. Heaven there, hell there. You're all born in sin, therefore you're going there, unless you repent, and then you're going there. And, you know, this is just a fear trip, isn't it, really? But there's no basis in occult or metaphysical truth about that at all.
You generate your own hell.
Exactly. You make your own hell and your own heaven. And I would say it's very similar to what you're doing now, with one great exception, and that is, I won't have arthritis.
No.
Because I won't have a physical body to have joints with arthritis in it, will I?
That's the one thing I'd be glad to get it done. It's the
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Thank God for that. All right, it's like driving a scrap heap of a car and then finally getting a new one. Right.
Yeah.
Daft has got round with you. Oh, this one dries properly. You know.
Look after it a bit better then.
Yeah, they were. Small start out like that, don't we? But my mother, who died, you know, of tumours and things, and had a very, very uncomfortable end to her life. After death, she'd be in her prime again.
Yes.
This is the thing, you see.
Yes.
Physical bodies grow up, reach a prime, and then it's all downhill, isn't it? But your astral body, it functions at its prime.
Yes.
And to all intents and purposes in that world, it will be a physical body for you because you're in that world.
Mm.
It isn't a physical body looking at it from this world,
No.
but it is in that world. What is subjective now, then will be objective. So you'll have a body that is perfectly healthy, in its prime.
Yes.
Well, that's something I can't wait. Hang on, why are we waiting about? Let's get on with it. You know, there's nothing to fear from death when you think about it like that, except the fact that what bothers us when we know we're dying is the things we haven't done, isn't it? The things we haven't said.
Yeah.
I know when I was dying, I immediately thought, well, I'm not ready to go yet. I've got things I want to do. What happened to all my plans? This isn't it. Surely I need another 10 years at least.
But probably if you have fulfilled what you're
Well, who
supposed
has?
to do, you're quite, well, we don't know until the point of death, though, do we?
Well, I came to the point of death and I realised I
yeah,
hadn't.
but you see, you hadn't fulfilled everything, so this is why you're still here.
Well, that's a very good point, Beryl, and that gives me some comfort.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you that since that time, I'm doing my best to get everything done that I wanted to do.
Some of us
Yes.
never feel fulfilled. I've never felt fulfilled.
Well, you'll get another life, though, won't you? Of course,
Yeah.
to do it.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's not the end, obviously. I'm not saying you'll never. What I'm saying is, what is fearful about death, most of what people concern people mostly about death, when they are actually reach that point, is what they haven't done and the people they're leaving behind.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's family, loved ones,
Yes.
friends, and the things that you love to share. So you'll often find a couple where the husband very rarely, if ever, says he loves his wife.
You know, it's sad.
But he does love her.
It is sad.
And he's having a heart attack. The first thing he says, I love you, I love you, I love you.
Yeah.
I did it.
Well, he should say it all the time, shouldn't we?
And all Julie would say was, your lips are going blue. I love you, Julie.
Bit late in the
Can't you think your
day.
lips are going blue? Yes, they're going blue, I'm dying, I love you.
Well, don't go then, Steve.
Yeah, don't go.
Oh,
Help, I'm going.
What about people who have died suddenly or committed suicide, those people? I was reading that they're in limbo.
Well, that depends. I mean, if my, you see, and this is probably only my view, I might have read it somewhere. Often I say these things or write them and I think, where's it? And then I check up and it is right, but I don't know where the hell I got it from. But my view is that life is rather, each of our lives is rather like a wave running up a beach. And it has so much momentum, energy stored in it, it's pushing it up on the beach, that beach being life. When it runs out of energy, it stops for a moment and then it recedes back again. So, in that sense, I'm not saying it's fate, destiny and fate that you're going to live so long, but there's only so much energy that your life's going to express in one incarnation. When that comes to an end, you're going to fade away and you're going to go, or you're going to go suddenly. If you take your own life, like 2 months before your natural ends, you're not going to be in limbo for much, are you? If at all. But if you take your life when you're 20 or 30 and you've got a whole life before you, I'm afraid you will, according to
You
occult
will
teachings,
then, yes.
be hanging around for quite some time.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you've got no afterlife to live, have you? You haven't
You've got to
generated
wait
one.
until that point when it was natural for you to
Yeah.
die.
So
Yeah.
will there be sort of angelic figures helping?
Yes, absolutely they will.
Yeah.
That's another thing that we have to realise. We're never really separated from all these wonderful energies around us and beings. We just don't see them when we're living. But the minute we pass over to the side, they're there and they help you.
I hope so.
I mean, when you're born, there's angels at the birth. Some mothers see them. When you die, there's angels
It's
at the
there
death.
again, yes.
So You won't be lonely, you won't be in limbo, you won't be suffering in hell.
I was just thinking of someone very close to me who did take their own life
Yeah.
in their
Well,
prime.
What sort of age were you looking at?
He was early 30s.
30.
Yeah.
Very sad, isn't it? The other thing that also to consider is,
Yeah.
does the soul after the death have the same awareness of time as we do? Because we know from experiments that time on that side is totally subjective to what it is here. A minute there can seem like 10 years here.
Yes, that's right.
You know, you dream in that world, so you all know that you can
28 he was, sorry.
28, yeah. And a lot of people whose lives are ended very prematurely like that are reborn again very quickly.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
And again, it's to experience. It's what you
Yeah.
wanted to experience.
You see, the other thing is life is striving for perfection, but it isn't perfect. It's only perfect in relative terms. Lots of things in life don't make it. You know, babies are stillborn, so on.
That's right.
So not every life is destined to reach a full
No.
term. That's not necessarily wrong. It's just part of the great variety of life. Isn't it? Can we choose to incarnate, or can we stay up there? That's another question that's been bandied around a lot. Well, you can't choose because you're entangled with your karma. And so Madame Blavatsky says, she calls it the law of necessity. In other words, it's necessary for you to be born again. You're born under the psychic law and the law of necessity. So the only time when you can say in the career of a human spirit that you don't have to reincarnate, or when you actually have a choice, is when you've reached that perfect state, which human evolution is about. We're talking the Buddha, the masters. Now the Buddha apparently reached perfection, and after he's passed away from this world, was free to enter nirvana, total bliss, away from this cycle entirely. But being the Buddha of compassion,
Yeah, he chose to.
he said, I won't go through that portal until everyone else is coming with me. So he's still here, still in amongst those ranks of beings, trying to help humanity. And so are the Theosophical masters and the other masters. But they do have a choice, you see, and some of them do from time to time exercise that choice and are born again for a specific purpose. They often don't live very long. Jesus only lived till he was 33.
Yeah.
So that leave you with that thought. Devashan, because what happens after the astral sojourn, where we've sort of worked out the things that we generated in our life that have strong emotional content. That's pleasure, pains, interest, likes, dislikes, love, all the kind of emotional stuff with its mental attachments. When we've gone through that process, then there's a kind of second death then, where that side of ourselves, that everyday thinking side that's mingled with the emotional part of our nature, is ready to be sloughed off like the physical body was before. Because we're looking at this from the spirit's point of view, which is put a thread through the planes down to a fetus, connected to that child, live the life of experience through that child, then withdrawn the thread away from the physical centres, letting the physical body die and the etheric body die, lingering a time in the astral world while that plays itself out, and then finally withdrawing its thread of life from the astral principles and the lower mental as well, which is a kind of another death. They call it the second death. And it's at that point where the spirit goes through another past life review, and at this point it's not a past life review, it's a past lives review. Because remember, we were saying that the spirit has had many lives. So when it's finished with this one, it reviews this one in the light of the others. In the way that the personality reviewed the life itself, the spirit reviews a series of lives. Now as the spirit becomes more evolved and more conscious and aware of itself, and what its purpose is, it can review many, many lives in context. A spirit that is still young in its formation will probably only be able to review 2 or 3 lives. But as it gets more adept in itself, it can review a whole panorama of lives and see them in context. But by now you're talking a very advanced person, very advanced soul. And from that it will choose specifically what circumstances it needs, taking into account its karma from the personality that's been generated, what specifically task it will do in its next life. And it may, even though it is in a very high evolved state itself, may choose to be born in very, very poor, limited circumstances, such as in the body of a Mongol child.
Yes.
And that life would be a sacrifice for the sake of other people. And you see quite a few of these high souls have come back into life just sacrificing their own needs for the good of those around them, to help those around them to move on in areas that they're weak in. People with all kinds of disabilities and disadvantages. But after that event, the second death so-called, the spirit then is left to its own devices. It has 3 principles. It's a trinity. That is a higher mind, the Buddhi nature, and the Atman itself. The Atman is the spark. We call it the monad very often. These 3 principles, we often refer to them as the monad. The terms here get very confusing depending on which author you're reading, and I wouldn't want you to get bothered about them. Basically, spiritually, you are a trinity. You have an area of awareness which is centered in the higher mental plane. So we call that higher mind. But it doesn't do particulars. It doesn't do street numbers and telephone numbers and poetry and car mechanics. It doesn't do any of the logical things. It only deals in abstract patterns. These abstract patterns during life are where inspiration comes from for all kinds of art and all kinds of achievements. So the person who invented the steam engine was getting that impression from his abstract mind, which he couldn't see images of a steam engine in, but he was getting patterns that filtered into his lower mind and started to crystallise in ideas like a piston, like steam expanding, this kind of thing. He was looking at the teapot lid going up and down, he's saying, hang on, and something in his higher mind is pushing down at him. That's the spirit. So that spirit now, that trinity, that triple being, is now totally outside of the world of personality. It's back into its own domain, and it goes through a period known then as Devachan. This is Sanskrit for what we would say in English would be the shining land. And in that state, it is contemplating the life it's led from its own point of view. Now, if this is a very young spirit in terms of evolution and lifetimes, it won't have much to contemplate, because all the life it had experienced wouldn't be in any way very much spiritual at all. It'd all be about grabbing for food and so forth, and all the things that primitive people have to do. But as the lives progress, and the spirit gets more and more influence in the life it's leading to the personality, it can then start to indulge in and experience more spiritual vibrations and things, such as love, such as compassion, such as art, such as higher forms of thinking, service, and all this higher level of humanity. It's those things that the spirit can use. The experience of those things it can absorb into itself at this point and assimilate, so that it becomes more than what it was before it incarnated. It grows through those experiences, but those experiences have to be of a spiritual kind. They can't be of a very earthly kind because there's no corresponding vibrations within the spiritual nature to respond to them. This period then is a kind of bliss where the spirit relives those areas of its life, past life, that were spiritual or had spiritual meaning and spiritual influence. And that's called Devashan. And it's a period of self-introspection of the spirit itself. How long it lasts, how long is a piece of string? It all depends on how much energy it's got to work with in these experiences it's generated. When that energy runs out, just as when the astral energy ran out before it, that period will come to an end. And the spirit then, far from being forced back into another personality, another physical body, actively seeks to do that so it can continue gaining experiences from which it will grow. And the process then is one of putting out a line of energy again where the qualities from its past life held in the aura of the spirit, called skandhas, we don't need to go into right now, are attracted to that line of energy at the different levels. Magnetically, the material forms around them to form the different bodies, and then at the very lowest point in the astral plane, the energy is, the line of energy is waiting for a suitable fetus to connect to. Now, it is said that you choose your life. It's said that you choose your parents.
To a certain point.
Yeah. But you're not choosing them through a catalogue.
No.
You're not saying, don't like her, or do like her. Oh, he's gross. Now, if you put, I'll have her as my mother and I'll have him as my father. You can't do that.
No.
But what you can do is, by the way you are, by the way you've reacted to your life and your experiences, by the way you've evolved, and the kind of thinking you do, and the way you've reacted to your after-death review, and the way your spirit itself has reacted to its experience, there are certain genetic combinations and life circumstances which are appropriate for the next life, both what the spirit wants and what the personality has generated and needs karmically to deal with.
Harmonic vibrations. Harmonic vibrations, like a chord.
Harmonic vibrations, yeah. And at the point where the right people in the right circumstances do the right thing, angelic beings actually connect that thread to the ovum at the point where conception takes place. And from then on, it remains connected until the death of the physical body. Now, the thing is, though, that connection is very tenuous. And the line itself coming through the planes is one of sympathetic vibrations rather than a direct line. It's like me talking to you and you talking to Greta, and Greta talking to Beryl, and Beryl talking to Norma, rather than me talking to Norma direct. And that's why it's only after like 7 years or so that I can talk directly to Norma. Up to that point I'm talking through all of you people. The spirit is talking through this sympathetic vibration, and the line is getting stronger and stronger and more fixed. And that's how that works. So you're choosing your parents now. You're choosing your next parents now, and in your afterlife. And there will be a variety of souls when you're ready that will suit the purpose. They won't all be living in the same street, in the same country, or the same religion, or the same whatever. But generally speaking, those circumstances, they will provide for you as a child. Even if your karma means you're going to be an orphan, if your karma suits an orphan rather than a loved child, then the circumstances that your spirit will connect to will be parents who won't want you, give you away at birth. But that's not wrong, because that's what the spirit needs in order to move on in its progression. It's all about expanding consciousness and awareness. It's not about having a good time.
And somewhere in the literature, it says that the body is formed, but that the most important bit is formed before the actual body.
Yeah,
That
Yeah.
starts when the vibration
yes.
comes into being.
Yes. There's a lot more going on here. I don't want to go into because it's a bit deep. But there are life atoms and permanent atoms and all these other things that are involved. I don't think it's appropriate for this talk. I did go into them in Colwyn Bay and then I realised I shouldn't have done it because it was just became a distraction really. In terms of just going back to karma for a moment to finish off a couple of points here. When we think of karma, we think of what befalls us and our lot in life and all that. But we've got to see that karma also extends out beyond ourselves. There's a karma of the planet.
Yes.
The earth itself has its own karma. And you can say, and others have said, that the earth's karma is humanity's and all the lives on it collective karma. In the same way that physically your karma is collectively the karma of all the cells and molecules and atoms in your body. Right? And emotionally, all the astral atoms and cells and molecules in your body. Because all these things repeat themselves at different levels, it's the same pattern. So the earth herself is actually, our karma is her karma. Now that's a sobering thought, isn't it? If we love our planet, and we're supposed to love ourselves, why do we do ourselves so much harm? And by inference then harming the planet in that same way. But she's big enough to take all that, because she's an incredibly powerful spiritual being. When the time comes that you can embody a planet, you'll know what I'm talking about. Because if we can embody a physical body like this, nothing compared to embodying a planet. With all those countless lives living on it and evolving on it, that's her great responsibility. But I do think it should be noted in passing that our karma is woven into the karma of our family, our society, our nation, our humanity, all the life around us, and the planet itself. So, that's about it, I think. I've covered everything that you those of you doing the course will be looking at, and that should be a help to you in some way. Don't forget that for the diploma course itself, which this isn't, we will have a seminar where we'll go through these things again, and I'll be asking you lots of questions in that seminar. I won't be just telling you what it is. I'll be asking you to tell me what it is, and then I'll be congratulating you or correcting you accordingly. But it's much more fun, as John knows. He's smirking at the back of the room.
Can I just say something?
Yes, you can.
When you were talking about the lower mental body,
Yeah.
You were saying that poetry would be left behind, and poetry is of the higher mental body of the spirit.
Creating poetry is, but remembering it is a lower mind.
Okay, remembering it.
Yes.
You use the word poetry.
Yeah, I did. I noticed when I said it that you would take that. Yes. When I said things of the lower mind, I referred to mechanics and various things, and your street number and all that, your house number. And then I said poetry. I meant remembering lists of words and lists. They're all to do with keeping ourselves up to date with what we're doing.
And then you went
But
on to
where
talk
poetry
about,
comes from is the higher mind.
Yes.
and then you went on to talk about a steam engine, which is actually of the lower mind. And you said that was of the higher mind.
No, where it came from.
Yes, the idea
The idea
was of the higher mind.
yes.
But the actual working out how to make it work was part of the lower mind.
That's right. I thought I had said that. But
It was just a bit blurry.
Okay.
That bit.
But this is how the mind works, you see. If you ask any any inventor, any artist or whatever, musician, composer, where they get their inspiration from, they don't know, they can't say, it just happens.
That's right.
But what they do is put themselves in that frame of mind, humming along a tune and whatever in a mind, and then it starts to come into the mind from higher mind. So mind is in two poles. One is the abstract pole, one is the concrete pole, positive pole. So everything sort of starts life in the abstract world, which is where the spirit is trying to impress the personality, and then filters through into the lower mind,
And you have to work it out.
where you start to add bits onto the idea. You formulate the idea then in a blueprint. Greta.
When you were talking, the thought struck me that some of the great discoveries of the world aren't discovered in just one place
No, that's
at
right.
one time,
Yeah.
but that would account for the fact that higher mind is,
Shared.
yeah.
Yeah, shared. And that's a very good point. Thank you, Greta, because what it tells us is that our lower minds are very personal to ourselves. They're our own identity, aren't they? Our own vision of us, image of ourselves. But higher mind is spiritual, therefore it's just shared.
Shared.
Yeah. And this is how the masters have actually influenced humanity through the centuries by casting into the higher mental plane ideas such as rubbing two sticks together to make fire, such as,
Masters actually are sharing an identity in that they're
at one level they're sharing an identity, yeah. They have their own self-awareness, but they have a collective identity as well, which they... Yeah. This is why, for instance, in the Mahatma letters, that some of the letters weren't written by the master who signed the bottom of it. That would be one of his students or disciples who's one with the master's mind and writes from him,
Yes.
as though it was him writing it.
Yes, that's true.
Access is the mainframe.
Well, like Julie can often tell me what I'm thinking. Even though I'm not. I mean, she tells me what I should be thinking anyway.
even when you don't know.
I don't know myself. And she knows my thinking better than I do, so I have to refer to Julie. What am I thinking now, love?
You know mine as well, don't you?
I remember Margaret Thatcher saying to some journalists, when I want your opinion, I shall tell you what it is.
Anyway, I was asked a question this week and it gave me real pause for thought because I was brought up there is only one God, and that was a great step forward for humanity.
Yes, it was, actually, yeah.
And the question was, did I believe in other gods as, the ultimate, the absolute, but gods within?
Yeah. What did you say?
I thought about it because this is swimming against my all my conditioning.
Yes.
And yes, I do.
Yeah.
Because, I look at the sun.
It's God, isn't it?
The
Apollo.
sun is, and I also look at the earth, and to me the earth is like a goddess.
Yeah.
So the answer I had to give against all the
All your conditioning was socialism was yes.
Yes.
And you see, the Theosophical Society, often people say, why the heck did you call yourselves the Theosophical Society? Why Theosophy? No one knows that. I mean, it just puts people off. But there's a real purpose to that, because Theosophy is two words combined, it's a compound word, Theos and Sophia. Sophia is wisdom. Theos, some people say is God, but actually it's from Theogonia, which is of the gods. So Theosophy is wisdom of the gods. And the gods in question are the incredible beings who remember the universe and put it all together.
It all again.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So we're not saying it's the wisdom of God himself, although in some sense it is, but it's the incredible beings that have evolved over millennia, way beyond our state, but are helping us to yeah.
But that's another lecture.
That's if we ever finish this one. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your
Thank you very much.